Hi, this episode's guest is Mutherem Dindar, an assistant tenure-track professor at the University of Tampere, Finland, studying game-based learning. His current research focuses on the utilization of multimodal data for understanding social cognition and social contagion in game-based and collaborative learning environments. We discuss what makes learning fun and how we can use what we learn about our behavior in games to create better game-based learning experiences. We hope you find this interview exciting and intriguing.
Welcome to Learning Clan. So, if you don't know, this is a podcast we started because, we find that there's so many intersections, let's say, of learning and culture, or learning and business, learning and life, and there's not really a lot of places to talk about these things, where they come together, where they meet. And just sort of have more expanded discussions on the wider world of learning. And actually, it was great you put the your student researcher in touch with me. So that sort of reminded me, and right around the same time, I think I'd seen the video that Tampere University put out featuring you and the research that you were doing, and I was like, this is great. Because we also get, of course, a lot of questions about gamification. It's a really hot topic in, I'd say, learning in general, like everywhere from, like preschool and primary school, all the way through to corporate training. It's everyone's sort of talking about it. And personally, I'm sort of on the fence about if it's effective, or to what extent it's effective, where we can use it. And I'm also more interested in, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I got the sense that your research in particular is a lot more interested in what's going on in our minds when we game. Why do we, I was thinking about, like, I play some games and, like, how do I learn them so quickly? It's a whole new set of mechanics every time you enter, and people learn them really fast. So I guess we can start with what makes learning fun, or why is learning in games fun?
Well, maybe before coming to games, actually, as you said, we can start like, well, what makes learning fun? The activity itself become fun. Well, learning becomes fun when it triggers our curiosity, and learning becomes fun when the subject of learning or knowledge construction is about ongoing interests, like we would like to learn about things we are interested in. Or learning becomes fun when the knowledge, the topic of knowledge kind of triggers new interest fields inside our mind, let's say. That's when learning becomes fun. And apart from that, we humans, we don't like to be passive recipients of knowledge, just like we are sitting and just someone is telling about concepts, formulas, knowledge. It's just, let's say, dictating us specific concepts. Learning becomes fun, actually, when we have the hands-on experiences on the learning concept itself, like when we try experiments do experiments on them. If it's a simulation, try the simulation, and rather than just being passive, we would like to be the active knowledge constructor in that setting. So in that case, learning becomes also fun. For example, when it's a problem-solving activity, then you jump into the situation, you tackle the obstacles, and apart from developing the knowledge, solving the problem kind of gives us a satisfaction. These are the features I can say that makes learning fun: being active, problem-centered, hands-on experiences, and it should trigger our curiosity, let's say.
Are there types of problems people tend to gravitate towards too in learning situations? It sort of sparked a question in me, like, okay, when we're solving problems, the problem needs to be fun. And I think it's probably quite easy to have a problem and frame it in a way that is unfun. and a way that is much more fun? And are there any qualifiers that we can attach to that?
Yeah, the problem itself from the beginning and the process of solving, it doesn't have to be fun actually. Like there are several epistemic emotions when we experience when solving problems. Frustration is one of these, for example. We get frustrated because we can't find a solution, let's say. But in the end, when we solve the problem, the whole experience becomes fun. Oh, it was fun. I solved it. So in that case, the process itself, it doesn't have to be fun. The outcome, the satisfaction of solving that problem, maybe it is the thing that brings the fun. I remember a professor, I can't actually remember his name. He might be Bandra or not. Like they asked him, like, hey, has he had a happy life? And he said, yeah, I had a happy life, but I have never had a happy week. So in a way, problems and challenges that they are frustrating and annoying in any moment, but tackling those and continuing, I think that's the fun. And again, Winston Churchill says, like, success is running from failure to failure without losing excitement. So in a way, yeah, the problem itself, it doesn't have to be funny by nature.
Okay, that's really cool. I like that there's this embrace of failure along with it, and I think that's another really good point, that it will bring like things like frustration, and that's kind of critical to these learning processes. Like you're being frustrated because you're being challenged, and that's ultimately a good thing in the end.
Yes, definitely. The frustration, maybe like psychologically, it comes from like our anxiety. Let's say we feel like we are not in control of events or things going around us. So in a problem situation, by developing knowledge around the problem, what are the variables affecting this problem situation, and how can I get rid of these inconsistencies, incongruencies, or other challenges in the problem situation itself? Yeah, that's what it triggers. And yeah.
Okay, so trying to bring these ideas to games.
Yes.
Is then using games in learning, or using games to understand learning, is it that they're a creative way to approach these problems, or an engaging way to approach these problems, or to approach problems?
Yeah, definitely. Again, connecting to what makes learning fun. By nature, when you ask a regular person, I guess, why do you play games? Because they are fun. We play games. So in a way, actually, games have quite inherent features. They are highly relevant to those concepts we have discussed about what makes learning fun. Games trigger curiosity. Games are full of puzzles and problems to be solved. There are challenges. There are increasing difficulty. So in a way, adaptive challenges, and we are improving our skills in the game environment. And based on that, more and more challenges are coming. And one thing I have also forgot to say in the previous question is that learning becomes more fun when it is presented around stories and narratives. And in game environments, when exploring the territory of the game, there's a story, there's a narrative. So in that case, actually, we see that there are many overlapping bridges between what makes learning fun and what games can offer. That's why games are a promising venue to make learning, let's say, more fun and more effective, because we would like to keep doing things that gives us pleasure and enjoyment. And if I enjoy this activity, I spend more time. By nature, if we spend more time on a practice, we become more expert or more knowledgeable on that field. That's the overlap between games and learning. To make it fun, let's say.
So, what kind of games do you play?
Actually, this is the question that scares me the most. I have to, confess. Actually, my hobbies do not include playing games.
Okay.
I have several and many colleagues around me, like who became game researchers because they love playing games. They, from childhood, like they have been involved in these famous game communities, and they still play games. And in a way, game research is their life in addition to playing games themselves. But my starting point studying games was not actually the activity of game itself. I was more curious and interested about what goes on in our minds when learning. So I was more interested in the human psychology, what goes on in our mind when learning occurs. And of course, the games are now becoming a digital medium. They are much more visible in the society. And then the question comes, then what happens in our mind and body when we play games and learn with games? That was my starting point, I can say. And yeah, unfortunately, I'm not a game geek. There are no specific games. I just follow all the time. Every now and then I try some mobile games, let's say.
Yeah.
But nowadays I don't play much because life commitments. I have 2 little kids, so I'm in a different phase of my life, I guess, which there are multiple priorities eating away time that I can use for playing games. Let's say.
So, well, then let's go to what happens in games. What happens to us when we're playing games?
Well, again, in a way, playing game is an embodied activity, and at the same time a cognitive and emotional activity, let's say. I'm not from neurosciences field, honestly. I'm not gonna go deep details of like what happens at the hormonal level when we play games. But I guess like in any kind of exciting situation, the adrenaline rush and the dopamine and that kind of hormones that triggers happiness and excitement, and enjoyment, that's part of the embodied experience. And apart from that, cognitively, as we have briefly mentioned, we go through several epistemic emotions. By saying epistemic emotions, it's like the emotions about the nature of knowledge. When we are presented a knowledge, if it kind of it is in parallel with our previous knowledge, we just automatically process the situation and condition. But if it doesn't fit to our previous knowledge, then incongruency happens. Let's say this can lead to frustration, this can lead to surprise, this can lead to boredom or happiness. So these kind of emotions I'm talking about when talking emotions. So in any gained condition like success, failure, advancing, not advancing, in a way it's a very emotional experience. So we go through several emotions when playing games. And when we talk about emotions, actually, this is not separate from what goes on in our cognition, because emotions and cognition, they're highly interrelated, and they are providing feedback cues to each other. Like cognitively, you are processing that I don't understand this, and then it creates frustration inside you, and then that frustration comes back to your cognition, let's say, and then how can I tackle this challenging situation? So you cognitively develop strategies, in a way, regulate yourself to tackle that challenging situation. So to summarize, I can say that in a way, playing games is a cognitive and affective roller coaster, and cognition and affect is highly intertwined and interrelated during playing games.
Okay. And in your recent research, specifically, like what were you measuring? Maybe what were you having the research subjects do or play? What was the goal and the outcome?
As you know me from University of, although actually like my 5 years postdoc time there, my background comes from collaborative learning. So I'm interested in how individuals collaborate and how they succeed or fail while collaborating. What are the effective moments or effective procedures or strategies that makes teams succeed or fail? And I still keep that interest, actually. Unfortunately, many of the educational games in our field is single-player games. But when we look at the actual game behavior in the gaming industry, there are lots of multiplayer games, and the socialization is a big motivation for other people to play games, joining teams, setting up teams, clans, competing against other teams. In a way, I'm more interested in the social dynamics, social nature of gameplay. In this regard, I'm highly interested in competitive and collaborative gaming situations, in a way, multiplayer games. That's my interest. And my research focuses on how we can utilize these competitive and collaborative game mechanics to make team interaction more effective, to make teams collaborate better and succeed better. And whether is it possible to provide teams adaptive support, let's say when they fail, or when they are not progressing well. So in this regard, my research focuses on the collaborative or competitive team dynamics in multiplayer educational games.
Right.
And to achieve this, I utilize different data modalities. I mean, different types of data, let's say. By modality, I mean types of data. For example, I collect facial emotions data of the multiplayer gamers when they are playing educational games and trying to understand how emotional contagion is manifested during the interacting team players, and whether this emotional contagion tells us anything about leader-follower dynamics in a team. Can we detect team leaders or team followers by just looking at this emotional contagion? Who is mimicking whose emotions, copying whose emotions, let's say. So what do these facial expressions tell about epistemic emotions, like the emotions that triggers our cognitive processes? These are my interests. And apart from that, I'm also interested in physiological coupling between the team members when they play competitive or collaborative games. By physiological coupling, I mean that the physiological signals derived from our autonomous nervous system, like heart rate, let's say, electrodermal activity. So these are not bodily signals we can just consciously control. Like they are kind of the output of what goes on in our mind and in our emotions. So by looking at these physiological synchrony, whether the team players are both physiologically aroused at the same time, whether the increased or decreased heart rate at the same time, does it tell anything about team interaction, quality of team interaction, or team performance? These are my current focus of interest, I can say.
Okay, so you're collecting facial data, like eye tracking and expression, like facial capture stuff, and heart rate, and I'm just curious about like what the actual models or models of data are. I think that might be interesting for everyone. How we're
Specifically, for
collecting.
example, I can say electrodermal activity is one of them. So
Yeah.
when we are physiologically aroused, like when we are excited, angry, or scared, we sweat more. And when we sweat more, the electricity on our skin increases. So we check that skin conductance by electrodermal activity and see whether this increased or decreased physiological arousal relates to specific cognitive processes like processing learning, tackling challenges in game-based learning environments. And similar to it, also like heart rate variability, for example, in mentally stressful conditions, our heart rate variability changes. So this kind of indicates whether the participants or the learners are stressed or like what's going on in their mind. That's another modality we are interested in. In terms of eye tracking, we are interested in joint attention. Like in a game environment, team play, you are in an immersive environment and everyone is maybe looking at different locations or everyone is looking at the same location in terms of tackling the challenge or the problem. So by joint eye gaze, I mean when the participants or the players look into same objects, same objects in the game environment, let's say, whether this joint attention in terms of eye tracking data tells us anything about joint cognitive processes in the team. That's one area of focus, and we capture facial expressions of the participants through video cameras in our lab when they are playing games. So this also gives us information when, let's say, physiological signals in terms of electrodermal activity, when the signal indicates increase, by merging it or checking it with kind of like checking it with the facial expression data, we could see this increased physiological arousal relates to surprise, relates to anger, relates to happiness. So in that case, these different data types or modalities are not separate from each other, actually. We kind of analyze them in a combined manner to understand the phenomenon of team process in a more comprehensive way from multiple directions.
Okay. I'm curious about what games or types of games are being used, and if there's, I imagine that there would be a difference if you've got someone on something like a Minecraft type game where it's a very like constructive, creative kind of environment, versus something like like a Call of Duty or a first-person sort of action adventure game. Like, do you use all those things, and are there differences that you're aware of?
Yeah, since my focus is on educational sciences, honestly, in my lab, I only utilize educational games. For example, first-person shooter games, role-player games. If the sole object of the game is not improving a specific knowledge, say on a specific curriculum area, that's kind of out of my interest because the field
Right.
is vast. But I have been in collaboration and in contact with our colleagues here in information technology faculty, and that's that kind of research they conduct actually. So their games are not limited to educational games. But my focus is specifically on educational games. For example, currently I'm collecting data on a biology game on evolution and basic genetics. So this is a 3 or 4 player games. So when the participants play the game, basically we have birds and they're all gray color. And the objective of the game is that you will make the birds colorful again. Like their caps will be colorful, wings, tail, chest, let's say. And this comes to the genes, of course. They have to conduct specific experiments in the environment to understand which genes the birds have and which birds should be mated to create a specific type of bird, let's say. So in a way, it's a problem-solving game, let's say, because there is this gray bird and everyone in the team should produce 3 of those desired birds. And it takes, let's say, 40 to 50 minutes to complete the game. And game ends when the participants each participant have 3 of those desired birds, let's say, and we quantify success in terms of number of mating. The less mating, the higher score you have. So you have to be very strategic in mating the birds.
Right.
If you
How
just
you're deploying
do
those.
trial and error, which just means that you're not really cognitively trying to solve the problem. You're just trying things, and then the number of matings skyrockets, and basically you lose the game compared to the other teams, let's say. To sum up, I'm more kind of like limited in the parameter of educational games, let's say.
Mm. Yeah, I asked just because I mean I play some games myself, and I do find that there are increasingly there's a lot of situations. So it might be a role playing game. I like those, but they're I mean regularly these days, including a lot of unique problem solving scenarios, and so this is just it's kind of making me think about. What is the role in the future of games and let's say game development houses, educational games? Is this something that you see expanding? Because of course, like resources are a big part of this, and
Yeah.
if you've got a huge production studio, then making some very like engaging, creative game that also has these, you become better with, I don't know, physical problem solving or spatial reasoning or something as a result. It's teaching you those kind of things almost in the
Yes.
background of the gameplay. Is that a direction? Is the industry ready for that? Or is it too many competing interests?
Well, first of all, I would like to start with these like games and problem solving skills. As you said, in many games, there are different types of problem solving. And this is not a new issue in a way that like when these digital games became and educational games became more and more popular, let's say after 2000s, like there was this kind of like an understanding of like, if you just play games, role-playing games, whatever, fantasy games, because it includes so much problem solving, then it would improve your problem solving skills in real life. And there were systematic literature reviews like studying that, yeah, everyone claims that, but no one measures it. I did actually.
All right.
I'm proud of it. So what I have done is like, okay, the question is like, do playing industry games, let's say, role-playing games, first-person shooter games, and even it can be a basic mobile game like Candy Crush, let's say, like, does it really improve our problem-solving skills? So what I have done is that I have visited high schools, almost 400 students. I first gave them a self-report, like which games they play, how many hours they play, and all those kind of basic questions about their gameplay behavior. And then I gave them PISA problem-solving test. PISA problem-solving test is a kind of universal test, like to compare the education systems all over the world. And 15-year-old students from all over the world participate in this PISA tests. And then, so since 2005, I guess, this problem solving is a separate category measured in addition to maths and science skills, let's say. So I gave these simulations, they are computer-based simulations problems. I gave them to high school students as well. And I found no relationship between basically video gameplay behaviors, gameplay preferences, and problem-solving skills. And actually, this also kind of like corroborates with the understanding of on psychology and educational psychology, especially, because there is this concept of the curse of domain specificity. So the knowledge, the skills we developed in a specific context can only be applied in that context. So we can only be experts in the fields we are studying and we are learning about. For example, one can be a perfect, fantastic surgeon, but at the same time, he can be horrible in making financial decisions. Being a great surgeon and having a great knowledge in that field does not mean that you're also a great problem solver in other fields. So that's the issue in a way. So we shouldn't take this granted that, okay, if we keep playing games, we'll be better problem solvers. It doesn't happen because learning requires effort, focus, and perseverance on a specific domain, field of domain, let's say. That's I would like to say for the relationship between video gameplay and problem solving skills. And once I saw this fantastic tweet, I would like to say also, talking about the impact of games is not different than talking about the impact of food on our health, because it all depends on the type of food you consume, let's say. That's the issue. And coming back to your second, industry and educational games, education industrial institutions, like whether they have competing interests or like whether they can converge together in the future to build educational games that can be scalable. There are certain challenges on this, and definitely the focus of gaming industry is profit and business, and there's so much profit and business by just creating games for entertainment. But when it comes to creating games for education, so the market is not that big, let's say, because schools are providing the education. So and another challenge is you create a game and basically anyone in the world can play it. But in the world, the curriculum are quite different across the countries. So it's not like you create a single game and it can be played by all the, let's say, middle school students, preschool kids. So it's challenging to create scalable educational games due to these cultural differences, political differences among the countries, curriculum differences, and those things. So investing on educational games is it risky from the game producer's perspective? I guess that's one challenge. But nowadays, we definitely see that there are several companies who solely focus on educational games and who are providing services for schools in terms of, let's say, teaching math, science skills, and that kind of stuff. So we also see that there is an increasing investment on producing educational games in specific countries like Netherlands, for example. Like in already primary and secondary schools, there are specific games that are often used for teaching maths and literacy skills to the primary school students, like Maths Garden, for example. So in a way, I don't see them as competing entities, but so far they had diverse interests, like diverging interests, let's say.
Yeah.
But now we see that there are also companies who are interested in like paying more attention to the education field and producing games for the educational organizations. And of course, there is this one challenge of digital divide, let's say. In a way, playing a digital game is a privilege, because then this means that you should have a kind of like a rather good mobile phone if it's a mobile game, or a decent computer, desktop computer, or internet connection. So in a way, like basically you should be maybe middle class, something like that. And anyone who can access to that, a game you produce can be accessed both by all those who have the internet and the phones or the devices. But when we talk about educational institutions, and we know that in some parts of the world there is no internet in school, there are no proper infrastructure to provide digital games to the players, because kids don't have smartphones, kids don't have computers, kids don't have internet. So then how can you create educational games for these kids? So there are these kind of digital inequity challenges as well, but hopefully, yeah, we will tackle those challenges. What I'm trying to say is that there are multiple challenges coming.
Yeah.
That come from the educational decision makers, that come from the interests of the industry, and that come also from the economical conditions in the world.
Okay. So I wanted to return to this idea of the domain specificity.
Yes.
Because, okay, so if we're dealing with a thing like we want to improve problem solving,
Yes.
but we don't want to do it particularly in this one game where it has particular physics or whatever reality to it. What is then the challenge or the threshold? Like, how can we design a game that is going to improve problem solving? Is that where like a lot of this kind of, I guess, research will come in, and curriculum and these kind of things start to really play an effect? Do we have to design around those principles?
So do you mean how we can maybe develop a game that would improve domain-free problem-solving skills?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, this also comes to the discussion of a bit like, there were these several mobile games became kind of popular, like cognitive trainers, like this is great against, let's say, Alzheimer's, dementia, or like it just trains your mind and your cognition becomes better and that kind of stuff. And actually the studies showed that they had no effect on improving cognition, and some of those game companies had to pay quite some fine to the players actually. So coming back to that, like, I'm not sure, like, again, like there is this domain-free problem-solving skills. And when we talk about them, actually, they are like practical real-life problem-solving skills, how you deal with the humans, yeah, how you deal with basic issues in actual daily life conditions. And then if we would like to develop such skills, then we should put participants into game that include the simulations of those real-life conditions. That would require us to develop our skills to tackle those problems. So in a way, then the games should be more realistic, actually. They should simulate more what's going on in actual life than just creating a fantasy world, like fantasy concepts, settings, and the problems are artificial.
Right.
Then we should do the opposite. We should make the problems actually more actual and realistic. For example, we see this in climate change issues. There are several virtual reality or like games developed to tackle with climate change and raise awareness about that. So they're not just creating fictional worlds. It's just most of the narratives and stories are actually coming from an actual real life settings. Let's say you are the mayor of a city and the carbon emissions and the stuff. So you are making real decisions, and that's maybe improving your skills or problem solving skills in that field. So coming back to summarize, I think that the problems in such games should be more realistic then, if we would like to improve domain-free problem solving skills.
So then that would lead me, I'm going to make an assumption here, lead me to believe that your opinion, for example, of things like Minecraft. I know there's a huge push with like Minecraft and Roblox in education settings, especially with like young learners. It's really pushed. They do like, is there any value, or is that a just a kind of
I am skeptical, I have
move
to say,
by the company?
And this game thing, because like, yeah, digital games are maybe new, like few decades, but the games are themselves, they're not new. Like for decades there were this like understanding, like, if you play chess is good for your like memory problem solving, or like it's good for your mind, isn't it? Now, current systematic literature reviews again show that actually like being good at chess it doesn't require necessarily mean that you're a very smart person. So coming back to this Minecraft, let's say, it might be fun, challenging to put blocks together, and it's a creative act. I don't deny that. So in a way, it might trigger creativity and creative power of the learner. But does it really improve cognition or problem-solving skills? I'm not sure. I'm most skeptical on that perspective. And of course, so we will see these maybe effects in 5-10 years when this Minecraft generation kind of like becomes young adults and like we see their performance in actual life. And then, yeah, we might have a chance to see whether these Minecraft and roadblocks and that kind of building worlds games really have any impact on development of young generation. But as I said, I'm skeptical.
Yeah. I'm thinking now. I'm sort of thinking about the alternative sort of thing might be situations in like maker spaces, because then we have some of the things that you've been discussing. We have problems and challenges, and certainly frustration. And it's very applied, it's very active, and it's
Yes.
playful. It's not maybe a game, but it is a playful activity to explore these technologies and tools and make something.
Definitely, I'm very pro maker spaces. I believe like learning by constructing, learning by hands-on experiences. That's what maker spaces are around, and that's great opportunity for young generations, for individuals to develop their skills and knowledge and problem solving. So in a way, I'm definitely supporting this makers movement in terms of developing maths and science skills and technological understanding of young generations. I think maybe we shouldn't confuse digital games with the makers movements. Games can be part of it.
Yeah.
And of course, you can create a game environment which, let's say, simulates creating devices, which includes math, science, and that kind of knowledge development also to solve those challenges and the stuff. Then it would be in line with the makers movements. But I guess maker spaces they carry specific differences than digital game environments.
Yeah.
I can say.
Yeah, for sure. So I guess then this brings us to the big question, which is the hype around gamification justified?
Well, actually, we have already passed that hype area, I guess. Like whenever a new technology is introduced, it kind of always comes with a hype, you know. Nowadays, the hype is artificial intelligence, virtual reality. Before that, it was, let's say, gamification, games. So we always see these huge expectations from any kind of new technology introduced. Like it's going to change everything. And this hype continues 5-10 years, and then the reality hits like, okay, maybe it will just change some things, not everything. So this was kind of same for gamification, like especially in business field, I have to say, like it can just kind of became hype, like, you know, if you gamify incentive systems, if you gamify everything, it's going to be very fun, you know, people will be more attached to work and the stuff. So, but yeah, the hype kind of didn't produce the expectations. And now, like the research and the understanding is becoming more realistic. Okay, gamification has limits as well, and it can support learning and engagement with whatever activity you are designing to a certain extent. But in a way, it's not a silver bullet itself, just or a magic wand that just solves everything. And this is not limited to gamification or digital games. Any kind of technology, yeah, it comes with limitations also. But I don't know, we just fall into this trap quite often, like, oh, getting so much excited and like having so much expectations, and then getting disappointed about that not because of the technology, because of our huge expectations, let's say. So, so I can say that hype is kind of like has faded in gamification field, and it's becoming more realistic about how games or gamification can work, and in which conditions it doesn't work actually.
So, well, maybe a couple follow-ups to that. Where does it work, or to your knowledge, where do you see it work? And are there negative impacts? Are there things that it can actually be detrimental to a learning situation?
Yeah, to my understanding and believe gamification would be most beneficial and efficient if it triggers sustained social interactions between team members, kind of like if it boosts the team cohesion. In the long term, it might have, so it's not the game itself, because if you bond with people, then you don't want to fail with them. You're part of the team or clan with your concept. So in that way, it creates this team cohesion, and it yields better performance in the long term. But if we just limit gamification to like giving badges, leaderboards, like, okay, I'm you remember these like fast food shops, employee of the month. We see those leaderboards everywhere there. They have been there for 50, 60 years, maybe longer, isn't it? And it's not like, and in that industry is one of the like most common industries that people just try to leave as soon as possible, So it's just like for your summer school or like when you're youngster. But anyway, so just leaderships or just giving people some badges in long term, it means nothing. So in a way, gamification works if the incentives really mean something to the person, and if the incentive is actually intrinsic, like if I'm really, I feel like I have developed my skills, I'm learning new things by participating in this gamified activity. It can be a company action, it can be a learning activity. So in the end, as a person, apart from badges and leaderboards or those whatever fake titles they give to me, like what it really means to me, like as a person, how does it improve myself? So that's what we should focus for. In the end, what people receive, and I'm not talking about the badges, in terms of knowledge, in terms of skill and development, and also the connection to the company or the connection to the environment and surrounding. That's when gamification works, if we create that kind of team cohesion, social bonding, and knowledge development. If you cannot sustain that, then it just wears off pretty quickly, actually. Right. And also like you get used to that. It's like YouTube ads, let's say, because that you just try to skip it as fast as possible, because that that's part of the company strategy, let's say, trying to sell you some stuff. So in a way, like when you just coming across with these gamified actions, and you become, they are trying to trick us again, like let's not participate in this activity, or like take shortcuts and kind of like cheat in the game or whatever. So in that case, it wouldn't work. And another thing is these gamified actions, one thing that might be detrimental is destructive competition. This is unfortunately applied quite often in big corporations. Let's say if your yearly performance is below specific threshold, you are fired. If you are above a specific threshold, you get the bonuses and all that kind of stuff. So every year, some people are getting like lots of bonuses. At the same time, some people are just being laid off, and that kind of negative competition. So this means that your success in this environment depends on others' failure. Although you are coined as we are team, let's do great, let's do all together. So this kind of negative competition and negative social interdependence, it might really be detrimental to the corporate culture, to the psychological well-being of the individuals. And we should be careful about utilizing gamification for this kind of destructive competition. Right. But on the other hand, if we can utilize these games for increasing increasing social relatedness and the team cohesion, I think that would be a good way to utilize games and gamifications in private life, let's say.
It sounds to me a lot like this comes down to like whoever's responsible for implementing, like their motivations should be clear. And if their motivations start with something like, I want to increase team cohesion and provide like a welcome, then you're going to have a more beneficial outcome than if you want to, I want to get them fired up about productivity or deliverable or something like that, and I'm going to use this game to do it. So it's really about the motives directing that use of gaming that sort of dictate what the outcomes are going to be, if it's going to be positive in long term or negative.
Yeah, definitely.
That's really interesting, and I don't think that that's something people think about. At least from my experience in industry, I tend to see games not always, but often used as the carrot and the stick sort of thing. as an analogy. And I wonder how that message got lost. Is it just that there's not enough focus and publicity on, the research yourself and colleagues are doing, or is it bottom lines? Who knows? Like,
again, I guess we can blame two sides. One, maybe researchers, not blaming, because it takes time for any kind of research field to mature. So this kind of gamification kind of started with competition, but nowadays, at least in Tampere University, there are multiple gamification research groups, quite prominent worldwide. Now the focus has kind of shifted to this cooperative gaming, cooperative gamification, how we can really kind of increase this kind of social bonds and structures among the individuals. So in a way, the time we are approaching to this kind of the understanding of how we can then utilize gamification to improve team cohesion. Let's say that it's going to that direction, and it took some time, and maybe we are a bit late. You can blame us on that. And in terms of again, thinking from the corporate side, unfortunately, things move very fast in the real industry, and people don't have time to play a long ball. Let's just invest on team cohesion, and hopefully it's going to be great for us in the next 2-5 years. So people just report 3 months, quarter, performance. You have to deliver something all the time, and then you are under pressure of producing more and more, being more efficient. So in that case, I guess just pushing people for competing creates faster results in the short term. That's unfortunately that's the challenge, and that's why maybe the competitive features of gamification have been used to a wider extent in private sector compared to these cooperative gamification features.
Okay, it's interesting. I feel that connects to the wider world of continuous development or continuous learning, and especially in the workplace, where it's the benefits, at least as research sees them, is typically much more long term, and I think that there's a high desire within corporate industry, at least, for very short-term deliverable results. I don't know that there's a solution for it, but
definitely. For example, I would like to maybe comment on this kind of one potential use of gamification in industry settings is achieving knowledge transfer among employees. And in these competitive settings, we know that knowledge hiding is prominent, because knowledge is power. If you share your knowledge, then you lose your power in the team. That's the general understanding. So no one shares their knowledge. And the ones who are most knowledgeable, if they leave the company, then no one knows what to do, because they are the ones who knows what's going on around. So to avoid this, I guess one option would be just focusing on the outcomes, maybe utilizing gamification and giving recognition to the employees or the team members for sharing knowledge with the others, for teaching them, for developing them. I see one great example of this, for example, in this online community of Kaggle. It's a website for teaching machine learning, data science, and all that kind of things. And there is a leaderboard. There is a ranking system. You have specific points. And there, you gain points by answering questions of people, because if you get stuck in your coding, you ask in the forum and someone replies. By replying, you get points. By helping others. So in a way, the more advanced you are in that environment, it means that the more you are open to sharing your knowledge and helping the others. So this kind of recognition, so in that way, providing knowledge transfer through gamification, I think it might be a fruitful area of both research and practice.
Yeah, that's really cool. I've never actually thought of it like that, and to gamify knowledge transfer. And that's another big issue that we work with, obviously. How can you uncover hidden knowledge in an organization? And yeah, that's something to keep in mind. I'm gonna look into this myself. So I think we've covered this, but I want to come back to it and just ask you one more time. What's special about games? What do they show us or teach us about learning that's unique or difficult to uncover in other situations?
In a way, by a media, they're nothing special. In the instructional technology field, there was this big debate whether is it the media or the pedagogy that really impacts education. And the famous Professor Clark, he's kind of like a commandment, like we remember in our PhD courses, that he said that the role of media in knowledge development is not different than the role of grocery truck in our nutrition. So in a way, media or any kind of medium is just for transferring the knowledge to the learners. The knowledge can be transferred face-to-face or through webcam, through simulations, through games. And by just changing the medium itself, it doesn't guarantee a better learning experience, a better learning performance. It is the pedagogy, it is the activity you conduct in that environment that would really improve learning and teaching, or learning and performance improvement, let's say. An example, you can ask student to write, let's say you are trying to teach multiplication and solve specific multiplication problems and write them 100 times in a notebook. And you can ask the same student, let's say, provide them a game and they conduct the multiplication 100 times by playing the game. So in a way, if assuming that students conduct both activities, it will both improve learning. Like students who just wrote 100 times to the notebook most probably would have the same knowledge as the students who solved it 100 times in the game. But the experience itself, let's say in the game, if you say like, okay, the moment, anytime you solve the problem, we will give you more water to water your plants, so you will have a beautiful garden. Or if it's a farm, so that in order to get some farm materials, you have to solve these problems. So the activity student, the activity itself, the pedagogy here is drill and practice. Actually, you're just practicing over and over to improve your skills. Because in some skills, like let's say vocabulary learning for this kind of multiplication and basic maths literacy skills, practice is important. Students have to practice to develop their skills in multiplication, division, addition, subtraction, let's say. So, but if you put it in the gamified environment, the activity, the pedagogy itself, let's say, becomes more fun. It's again drill and practice. So that's the promise of games, actually, as it relates to our first discussion again. It triggers your curiosity and you take part in the learning activity without, let's say, getting bored, without even knowing that you are in the gamified environment. So in that case, it's a more immersive experience. That's the advantage of the games, more fun, basically. And apart from that, in some fields, teaching and training is so costly. And the risks are so high. For example, that's why we train pilots on the simulations, not on actual flights. They have to complete certain hours of simulation training before they fly an actual plane. Because if you drop an actual plane while training, that still it costs a lot in terms of human resources, even in terms of tragedy, whatever you call. But what you do, you create this safe environment. This is also the case for serious games, for example. You would like to train firefighters, or big chemical companies, there are always these possibilities of explosions or that kind of stuff. You cannot simulate actual explosions to train employees how to deal with that kind of hazardous situations. You just create this game environment, let's say, in a much safer way. You allow them to experience the actual real life situation and how to deal with it. So in a way, games provide us a safer option to develop skills and training in high risk areas, especially. That's one advantage. And again, in terms of, let's say, teaching any kind of digital solution, like especially these games, scalable level, one teacher can attend to one student at a time. But if we can somehow develop these adaptive games, which can process learner data and provide adaptive scaffolding and support, and in that case, every student is kind of like working with a separate tutor. So, and it's more efficient and more effective because different students have different knowledge and expertise levels. So when student is explaining a specific concept to the student who knows the least in the classroom, the others get bored. If he explains it to the student who knows the most, and the ones who doesn't know much, they don't understand anything. So it's difficult. I used to be a teacher in the classroom to find this compromise, like what is the optimum level of difficulty I should be talking about this concept. So games, we are moving towards that direction with this machine learning and artificial intelligence, that we would be able to provide more adaptive, more personalized learning experiences to learners. That's the promise, I can say.
Cool. Cool. I think that just about does it for my questions at this point. If you have any other final remarks you'd like to make. Oh, I did have one more, actually.
Yes.
So based on what you've just said, do we need to train teachers and pedagogical researchers in fun? Do we need to train them better to understand and have fun?
I totally agree with this, and this goes beyond training them how to teach digital games. This is not a new concept like playful learning experiences.
Yeah.
And we don't need digital tools to make any kind of classroom learning activity also fun and playful. And I totally agree. I think that's a big necessity. I know that in some universities, like in Oulu, in Lapland, we give these kind of like playful learning experiences courses that gives the basics of how you create this kind of playful learning experiences. But in my own country, when I was receiving the teaching qualifications, I was never taught or offered a course on this, like how we can make learning more playful, more gameful. Definitely, I think we need to equip new generation, even like the current generation of teachers, on and help them how to create fun, engaging, and playful learning activities in their actual classrooms without even needing the digital games. I think that's a big, gap that is awaiting to be filled, actually addressed. Let's say I totally agree with you.
Okay, problems for the future.
Yes.
Mutherem, thank you so much for doing the call today. Really appreciate it. It was super interesting, and let's keep in touch.
Chris, thank you so much. It was fun. This is my first ever podcast in my life. I was a bit nervous. So thanks for inviting me. And yeah, it was nice sharing my thoughts and experiences. And let's keep in touch and good luck with your work there.